Before you judge anyone in this story, pause. Because one cruel kick inside a luxury restaurant exposed a truth no one was ready for. What looked like weakness was restraint. What looked like power was fear. And what happened next changed every life in that room forever. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in the story. Alicia Monroe learned silence long before she learned how to fight. She learned it in grocery store lines where her mother's patience was mistaken for weakness. She learned it in classrooms where teachers praised her obedience but ignored her brilliance. And she learned it most painfully the first time someone realized she wouldn't fight back. Because she didn't need to. By the time Alicia was 28, silence had become second nature. She worked evenings at Levant Noir, a high-end restaurant suspended above the city skyline like a private throne room for the wealthy. Everything about the place whispered exclusivity, dim amber lights, marble floors polished until reflections trembled beneath expensive shoes, and a menu that cost more than most people's rent. Alicia wore the uniform perfectly, crisp white shirt, black slacks, hair tied back tight enough to never fall loose. She kept her eyes soft, her smile practiced, her movements efficient. She had mastered the art of being overlooked. No one there knew her real story. No one knew she'd once trained in a concrete gym that smelled of iron and sweat, where the walls were chipped and the lessons were brutal. No one knew she had spent years learning leverage, timing, and restraint, how to redirect force, how to disable without destroying. She had been lethal once. She chose not to be anymore. The choice haunted her. Alicia didn't leave fighting because she lost. She left because she won too completely. One opponent never fully recovered. The victory felt hollow, poisoned. That night, Alicia promised herself she would never again use her strength unless she had no other choice. So she poured wine instead of blood, she served plates instead of blows, she swallowed words instead of rage. Across the room, Victor Langston believed silence meant obedience. Victor was 39 years old, impeccably dressed, and painfully certain of his own importance. He was the kind of man who told people he was self-made, without mentioning the ladders he'd kicked away on the climb up. To Victor, money was proof of intelligence. Power was proof of virtue. And anyone without either simply hadn't earned the right to matter. He sat at the center of a long table surrounded by potential investors, men and women who laughed a little too quickly at his jokes, leaned in a little too close when he spoke. His voice carried authority because people believed it should. Victor liked that. Tonight was important. A deal was in motion, one that would elevate him from millionaire to something closer to untouchable. He felt it. The air bent slightly around him. The room responded to his presence. When Alicia approached with a bottle of red wine, Victor didn't see a woman. He saw a service. She poured carefully, precise and controlled, her hands steady. She had learned long ago how to navigate crowded spaces without collision, how to read rooms the way fighters read opponents. But the restaurant was packed. Tables close. Chairs tight. As she stepped back, her hip brushed the edge of Victor's chair. Just enough. A single drop of wine slipped from the glass and landed on the toe of his shoe. The sound of conversation thinned. Victor looked down slowly, as if offended by the very concept of inconvenience. His jaw tightened. Something ugly flickered behind his eyes. Alicia already had the napkin in her hand. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said quietly, kneeling to dab the shoe. Her voice was calm. Controlled. That calm irritated him. Victor had spent his life confusing dominance with respect, volume with authority. And in that moment, Alicia's composure felt like defiance, even though it wasn't. "Do you know how much these cost?" he snapped, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Yes, sir," Alicia replied. "I'll have them cleaned immediately." She didn't argue, she didn't justify, she didn't look afraid. That was the problem. Victor rose from his chair abruptly, irritation boiling over into something sharper. He didn't think. He reacted. His foot snapped backward. Not a wild kick, a deliberate one. A kick meant to humble. The strike hit behind Alicia's knee. Her body folded instantly. Plates shattered as she fell to the marble floor. The sound echoed, sharp, final. Gasps rippled through the room like a wave breaking. Time slowed. Alicia's muscles reacted before her thoughts did. Her training surged forward. Balance, angles, muscle memory screaming instructions. She could end this. She could stand, pivot, and put Victor on the floor before anyone could stop her. She could remind him, remind everyone, that power didn't belong exclusively to men like him. Her fists clenched. Then she breathed. She stayed down. The restraint cost her everything. She lifted her eyes slowly and looked at Victor, not with fear, not with rage, but with something far heavier. Disappointment. "You don't know who you're kicking," she said quietly. The room fell silent. Phones were already out. Whispers froze mid-sentence. Victor felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Awareness. For the first time that night, he realized he wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. Their worlds, so distant moments before, had collided. And nothing would be the same again. If this moment pulled you in, tap like, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed, because the next thing changes everything. The silence didn't break all at once. It fractured. At first, no one moved. The kind of stillness that follows something so wrong the brain refuses to process it. Then the room inhaled, sharp, collective, and the noise returned in pieces. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Did he just?" Glass crunched under a heel. Alicia was still on the floor. Not because she couldn't stand. Because she was choosing not to. Her palms pressed lightly against the marble, feeling the cold seep into her skin. She focused on her breathing the way she had been taught years ago in a gym with cracked mirrors and no mercy. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Count to 4. Let the surge pass. Her knee throbbed, not injured, just shocked. The kick had been precise in a cruel, thoughtless way. Designed to humiliate, not maim. That distinction mattered. Alicia rose slowly, deliberately. No sudden movements. No aggression. She brushed shards of porcelain from her apron as if this were just another spill, another accident she'd be expected to clean. Only this one had witnesses. The manager, Henri, rushed forward, face pale. "Sir, please let's..." Victor barely heard him. He was staring at Alicia. At the way she stood. Centered. Balanced. Alert. Not shaken. Something about that unsettled him. It wasn't how victims were supposed to look. He'd expected tears. Anger. A scene. Something that reaffirmed his dominance. Instead, he felt exposed. "You don't know who you're kicking," she'd said. The sentence echoed in his head, louder than the gasps. Victor scoffed too quickly. "Get her out of here," he snapped, pointing. "She's a liability." A murmur of disagreement rose from nearby tables. "That was uncalled for. You can't just..." "I saw everything." Victor turned, scanning faces that no longer looked impressed. For the first time in years, his money didn't feel like armor. It felt thin. Transparent. Henri stepped between them. "Mr. Langston, we need to take a moment. Please sit down." Victor hesitated. The hesitation was noticed. Alicia met Henry's eyes. "I'm fine," she said softly. "I can finish my shift." Henri looked at her in disbelief. "Are you sure?" She nodded. What she didn't say was that leaving now would feel like surrender. And she had surrendered enough in her life already. Victor stared at her, searching for cracks. "You think you're tough?" he muttered, low enough that only she could hear. "This doesn't end well for you." Alicia didn't respond. She stepped past him and disappeared into the kitchen. Behind the swinging doors, the noise hit her all at once. "Are you okay? That man is insane. You should call the police." Alicia leaned against the stainless steel counter, finally letting her hands shake. Adrenaline surged through her veins, hot and demanding. Every instinct screamed to release it, to punch, to grapple, to do something. She didn't. She grabbed a glass of water and drank slowly until the tremor eased. Out front, Victor tried to regain control. He laughed too loudly. Made a joke that didn't land. His investors exchanged glances, discomfort spreading like a stain. One woman stood. "I'm leaving," she said flatly. That was unacceptable. Another followed. Within minutes, The table that had once been full of power began to empty. Victor sat alone. That had never happened before. Phones buzzed across the room. Someone had posted the video already, grainy, angled, but unmistakable. The fall. The stillness afterward. By the time Victor's phone vibrated in his pocket, the caption was already spreading. Millionaire assaults waitress in upscale restaurant. He stared at the screen, pulse pounding. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. In the kitchen, Alicia finished her shift with mechanical precision. She avoided mirrors. Avoided conversation. She didn't want sympathy. She didn't want praise. She wanted the night to end. When she finally clocked out, Henri stopped her. "I'm so sorry," he said. "We'll handle this. I promise." Alicia nodded. "Thank you." As she stepped outside into the cool night air, her phone buzzed. Message after message. Friends. Old training partners she hadn't spoken to in years. "Is this you? Tell me you're okay. Don't do anything stupid." She sat on the curb, exhaustion crashing over her. She thought of the gym. Of the girl she used to be. Of how close she'd come to letting that girl take over again. Across town, Victor stood in his penthouse staring at the same video. Comments scrolled faster than he could read. Arrogant. Disgusting. Fire him, jail. His assistant called. Then his lawyer. Then his PR team. Say nothing, they told him. We'll control the narrative. Victor muted the phone. For the first time, silence didn't feel like power. It felt like fear. Somewhere deep inside, a question he'd never allowed himself to ask surfaced uninvited. What if I was wrong? The night stretched on, heavy and unresolved. Neither of them slept. Both of them knew the spark had been lit. And whatever came next would burn far deeper than bruises. Do you feel anger, shock, empathy? Hit like and comment what stood out to you. Morning didn't bring clarity. It brought noise. Alicia woke to her phone vibrating nonstop on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the small apartment she kept intentionally sparse. No television. No trophies. No reminders of who she used to be. Just neutral colors and quiet. She let the phone buzz until it stopped, then picked it up with a heavy sigh. Missed calls. Messages. Notifications. The video had gone viral overnight. Not just reposted, analyzed. Slowed down. Commented on by people who had never met her but suddenly knew her face, her posture, her restraint. Some called her brave. Others called her weak for not fighting back. A few dug deeper, finding old footage, grainy clips from amateur fight circuits years ago. Former fighter assaulted at restaurant, one headline read. Her chest tightened. She hadn't wanted her past resurrected. She had buried it carefully, like something dangerous that needed to stay underground. At Levant Noir, the mood was brittle. Management held an emergency meeting before opening. Lawyers on speakerphone. Security plans revised. The owner's voice shook as he tried to balance accountability with survival. "We are cooperating fully," he said. "Alicia, you are not in trouble. Please understand that." She nodded, arms folded, listening without speaking. Across town, Victor Langston's world was unraveling faster than any market crash. Sponsors suspended partnerships. Investors postponed meetings. The phrase pattern of behavior began appearing in articles, pulling in old stories he'd paid to disappear. Victor sat in his office, suit untouched, staring at the city below. His lawyer's voice crackled through the speaker. "We need to arrange mediation. Quietly. The optics are bad." Victor scoffed. "She spilled wine on me." Silence. "That's not the story anymore," the lawyer replied. For the first time, Victor felt something unfamiliar squeeze his chest. Helplessness. He replayed the moment in his mind, not the kick, but what came after. The way Alicia looked at him. As if she saw past the money, past the suit, straight into something small and ugly. That look followed him. The restaurant requested formal mediation to avoid lawsuits and further backlash. Victor resisted at first, pride flaring, ego wounded. Then another sponsor pulled out. He agreed. Alicia received the request that afternoon. She sat at her kitchen table long after reading it, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. Part of her wanted to refuse. To protect herself. To keep her distance from the man who'd tried to humiliate her. Another part knew avoidance wouldn't bring peace. Avoidance never had. At the gym that evening, a place she hadn't visited in years, Alicia wrapped her hands slowly, methodically. Muscle memory returned instantly. The familiar ache grounded her. Her former coach watched from across the room. "You look calm," he said. "I don't feel it," she admitted. He nodded. "That's restraint. Harder than throwing punches." Mediation day arrived heavy with expectation. Alicia entered the private office first. Neutral space. Soft lighting. No audience. No cameras. Victor arrived minutes later. Without his entourage, without the noise, he looked smaller. They sat across from each other. The distance between them wasn't physical. It was moral. Victor cleared his throat. "I didn't intend." Alicia raised a hand gently. "Intent doesn't erase impact." He stiffened. For the first time, someone had cut him off without fear. They spoke cautiously at first. Legal language. Prepared phrases. Polite distance. Then Alicia said something that shifted the room. "I could have hurt you," she said calmly. "Badly." Victor looked up sharply. "I didn't," she continued. "Because I chose not to become what you expected me to be." That landed. Victor swallowed. His worldview, power equals dominance, cracked under the weight of her restraint. He didn't apologize yet. He wasn't there. But something had begun to shift. Outside, pressure mounted. Activists protested. Commentators demanded consequences. Others demanded forgiveness. Alicia felt pulled apart by expectations she never asked for. Victor felt cornered by a reckoning he'd delayed his entire life. Neither of them wanted this confrontation. Neither could escape it. The mediation ended unresolved, but altered. As they stood to leave, Victor hesitated. "I don't understand you," he admitted quietly. Alicia met his eyes. "That's okay. Understanding isn't required. Respect is." He had no reply. Circumstances were tightening. Public scrutiny. Legal pressure. Personal doubt. Avoidance was no longer an option. Whatever came next would force them closer, or break them both. The city felt different after the mediation. Quieter. Sharper. As if every sound carried judgment. Alicia noticed it first in small ways. People recognizing her at the bus stop, strangers offering nods of encouragement, others staring a little too long. She kept her head down, headphones in, moving through the world with the same discipline she'd learned in the ring. Protect your center, conserve energy, never react on impulse. Victor noticed it in emptier rooms. Meetings canceled until further notice. Calls returned by assistants instead of principals. Invitations quietly rescinded. The penthouse felt cavernous now, the silence no longer luxurious but accusatory. They were both being isolated. Public pressure demanded accountability. Legal teams pushed for resolution. The restaurant owner insisted on continued dialogue, not for optics this time, but because the tension had grown too large to ignore. So Alicia and Victor were brought back together. This time, not across a table. Side by side. A community forum had been arranged, controlled, moderated, no cameras allowed. The goal was to address workplace power dynamics and public accountability. Victor's team wanted him seen listening. Alicia agreed only after ensuring she wouldn't be forced to speak. The irony wasn't lost on her. They sat in the same row, 2 chairs apart. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Alicia sat still. As speakers shared stories, of humiliation, of silence mistaken for consent, Victor's posture changed. He leaned forward. His jaw tightened. He didn't interrupt. Alicia watched him from the corner of her eye, curious despite herself. During a break, they found themselves alone near the exit. "This isn't what I expected," Victor admitted quietly. "No," Alicia replied. "It rarely is." He hesitated, then asked, "Why didn't you fight back?" She considered the question carefully. "Because I've already won fights that cost me more than they gave," she said. "I didn't want another victory like that." Victor absorbed this in silence. Forced proximity continued. Legal meetings. Restorative justice sessions. Shared spaces where avoidance wasn't possible. The tension softened, not into comfort, but into something fragile and real. One evening, after a long session, they walked out together. "You don't hate me," Victor said, surprised. "I don't," Alicia replied. "Hate gives power. I already know what power feels like." That unsettled him. Victor began to confront pieces of himself he'd long ignored. Moments of cruelty dismissed as stress. Silence he'd mistaken for approval. He realized how often he'd used fear as a shortcut. Alicia, in turn, felt something unexpected surface. Relief. For years, she'd carried the weight of restraint alone, afraid that choosing peace made her invisible. Now, for the first time, someone was seeing the strength in what she didn't do. A fragile bond formed, not friendship, not forgiveness, but mutual recognition. Still, something loomed. Victor's advisors urged a quiet settlement and a strategic apology. Alicia sensed the pressure building, the temptation for him to retreat into image management instead of truth. They met one final time before the public decision. "If you do this just to save yourself," Alicia said, "it won't matter." Victor looked tired, worn down. "What if I don't know how to do it any other way?" he asked. Alicia paused, then answered softly, "Then learn." The words hung between them. Outside, the world waited. The next step would either deepen the wound, or finally begin to heal it. And both of them knew it. If you feel the shift happening, like this video and drop a comment. The day Victor Langston stepped in front of the cameras, the city held its breath. Not because anyone expected sincerity, but because everyone expected performance. Alicia didn't plan to watch. She sat on her couch, remote untouched, the television dark. For days, she'd felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the same feeling she used to get before a fight. Anticipation mixed with dread. Not of violence this time, but of disappointment. She had seen men like Victor before. Men who learned just enough humility to survive the moment, then returned to old habits once the noise faded. She stood, paced, then finally turned the TV on. Victor walked onto the stage alone. No executives flanking him. No legal counsel whispering cues. No carefully designed backdrop. Just a podium, a microphone, and silence. He looked different. Not smaller, but stripped. "I won't take much of your time," Victor began, voice steady but unpolished. "Because this isn't about speeches. It's about truth." The room stayed quiet. "I assaulted a woman," he said plainly. "I abused power. I used my status to humiliate someone I believed couldn't challenge me." A murmur rippled through the press. Alicia felt her breath catch. Victor continued. "I thought wealth made me important. I thought silence meant agreement. I was wrong about all of it." He paused. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. "I was taught to win at all costs. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people as people." He looked directly into the camera. "I'm stepping down from my company effective immediately. Not because I was forced to, but because leadership without accountability is just dominance in disguise." The words landed heavy. Questions exploded from reporters, but Victor raised a hand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I haven't earned it. I'm asking for the chance to do better, and I understand that chance may never come." The broadcast cut. Alicia sat frozen. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling. She felt something unfamiliar and fragile unfold inside her chest. Release. Later that evening, her phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. "If you're willing, I'd like to thank you in person." No cameras. No agenda. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she replied. "One conversation. That's all." They met in a small, quiet park just before sunset. No security. No spectacle. Victor stood when he saw her approach, unsure of what to do with his hands, his posture suddenly uncertain in a way it had never been before. "Thank you for coming," he said. Alicia nodded. "Say what you need to say." He swallowed. "You could have destroyed me that night." "I know," she replied. "That restraint," Victor continued, "it forced me to see myself. And I didn't like what I saw." Alicia listened, arms folded loosely, grounded. I spent my life thinking power meant control, he said. But when you didn't fight back, I felt powerless for the first time. She studied him carefully. Power isn't gone just because you stop abusing it, she said. It just changes shape. Victor nodded slowly. I'm still learning what that means. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky darken. Finally, Victor spoke again. I don't expect forgiveness. Alicia stood. Good, she said. Because this isn't about you feeling better. She paused, then added, but this is about you choosing differently. Every day. Victor looked up at her. And you? She met his eyes. I already chose. She turned to leave, then stopped. Just so you know, she said calmly, I wasn't silent because I was weak. Victor nodded. I know. Alicia walked away, lighter than she had in years. Weeks later, her life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became honest. She left Levant Noir. Took a job teaching self-defense to young women, many of them underestimated, overlooked, unheard. She taught them technique, yes, but more than that, she taught them choice. That strength didn't have to announce itself, that restraint wasn't surrender, that dignity could be louder than violence. Victor disappeared from headlines. Not erased, but quiet. And for the first time, the silence felt earned. Because this story was never about a kick. It was about what followed. The moment someone chose empathy over ego, restraint over rage, humanity over hierarchy. And in that choice, everything changed. If this story stayed with you, like this video. If it made you reflect, comment how it made you feel, and if you believe stories like this matter, subscribe, because the next one might change how you see the world too.